Imagine a discovery that completely shatters all the history we were taught from the school desk. September 1969 delivered a colossal surprise. An artifact was discovered in the Siberian Earth, the age of which is estimated at a fantastic 800 million years. How do you like those numbers? We are used to blindly trusting textbooks, but what if official science is simply cowardly, hiding the greatest proof of real time travel from us? This relates to those very incidents when a top-secret classification appears over a case instantly, as if by an invisible command from above. The mysterious marble sarcophagus, with its incredible contents, has been troubling the minds of independent researchers for decades. Could it be that in the unimaginably distant past, guests from the future, whose technologies surpass all our fantasies, crashed on our planet? Let's figure out exactly what inconvenient facts this Siberian anomaly is hiding. September 1969 is forever burned into the memories of those who found themselves involved in this incredible anomaly. Picture the harsh Kuzbass, the absolute epicenter of the Soviet coal industry, where people were accustomed to backbreaking physical labor, not mystical revelations. The Kemerovo region, the tiny village of Rzhavchik, in the Tisul district. This is exactly where, far from metropolitan institutes and the prying eyes of the press, the Earth split open to reveal its most shocking secret. At a depth of exactly 70 meters, beneath a monolithic 20-meter seam of solid coal, hid something absolutely unimaginable. How could an artificial object end up in a place where even the tracks of dinosaurs shouldn't exist? A brigade of workers was monotonously gnawing into the bedrock until the excavator bucket scraped against something alien. It wasn't a chunk of ore or a petrified tree, but a gigantic marble monolith, crafted with frightening geometric precision. Astoundingly, the multi-ton stone box lay beneath a dense layer that had remained untouched since the Paleozoic era. Could the official academic science ever admit that someone was walking around the territory of modern Siberia long before the appearance of the first primates? This relates to those strictly guarded secrets that the nomenclature spent decades trying to bury in dusty archives under the highest security clearance. The general public remained in blissful ignorance for 33 long years, until a massive informational explosion detonated in August 2002. The newspaper Khakassia released a sensational piece authored by journalist Oleg Kulishkin, who published his infamous article, "The Lady Who is 800 Million Years Old." The effect of an exploding bomb. That is the only way to describe the stunned reader's reaction to this audacious publication. Kulishkin, writing under the pseudonym Gonchar, didn't just challenge established historical dogmas, he turned the entire known chronology of humanity inside out. In his article, he laid out facts with frightening meticulousness, relying on the testimony of a certain retired military officer whose name was withheld for obvious reasons. The reporter claimed that the discovery in the Tisul district was not a figment of a sick imagination, but a documented reality that was hastily erased from all Soviet reports. Can we continue to submissively turn a blind eye to such glaring inconsistencies in our official chronicles? This relates to the category of inconvenient truths that are easier to declare a cheap tabloid hoax than to rewrite every single school textbook on biology and history. The publication of 2002 dragged out into the broad daylight spine-chilling details. The exact coordinates of the mine, the surnames of the site managers, and even a detailed description of that very fateful day. The sheer scale of this historical anomaly is such that even today, decades later, hardened Siberian old-timers fearfully lower their voices when the conversation turns to the events at the quarry near the village of Rzhavchik. Did the state machine genuinely believe it could forever hide an artifact capable of turning our understanding of the universe upside down? In the very heat of the working day, at the mind-boggling depth of 70 meters, an ordinary shift turned into the prologue of the greatest mystery of the century. Pitch-black darkness surrounded them, torn only by the dim light of spotlights and clouds of caustic coal dust. There was nothing to breathe. Sweat flooded the eyes of the harsh Kuzbass men, methodically gnawing into the bedrock. And suddenly, a deafening screech of metal made the entire quarry excavation shudder. The bucket of the powerful excavator crashed into an insurmountable obstacle with great force, emitting a sound completely unlike the crunch of ordinary rock or coal. The operator abruptly shut down the engine, and in the resulting ringing silence, the workers rushed to the point of impact. What emerged through the crumbling black dirt made the experienced miners freeze in mute stupor. From under a centuries-old seam of ancient coal, perfectly smooth, dazzlingly white material looked back at them. The contrast was so monstrous that it seemed like a mockery of common sense. Amidst the primordial blackness and rough rock lay a gigantic 2-meter sarcophagus made of noble marble. How is this even possible? This relates to those incredible accidents that in 1 second cross out all the laws of physics and logic. The foreman immediately gave the order to stop all work in the area and carefully clean the find by hand. Dozens of calloused hands began to gently scrape centuries of dirt from the snow-white surface of the stone monolith. The box was crafted with incredible, frightening precision, its edges perfectly even, as if treated with a laser rather than the primitive tools of ancestors. But along with curiosity, a primordial, chilling fear began to creep into the souls of the miners. In these remote Siberian regions, ancient superstitions passed down from generation to generation have always been strong. Local old-timers had whispered for centuries that one must not disturb underground shrines, otherwise you will inevitably bring the curse of the depths upon yourself. One of the workers timidly suggested burying the strange box back and forgetting about it forever so as not to wake up evil. However, the irresistible pull towards the unknown proved stronger than any mystical fears. A risky, desperate decision was made to open the sarcophagus immediately, right here in the dusty quarry. The workers armed themselves with crowbars and pry bars, trying to pry open the massive stone lid. But it sat dead tight, as if soldered to the base with a mysterious, petrified putty. This strange substance on the edges of the box did not yield to the blows of iron, firmly holding the secret inside. And then nature itself intervened, as if playing along with the men driven mad by excitement. This relates to those rare moments when chance dictates its rules of the game. Under the scorching rays of the midday sun, illuminating the bottom of the quarry, the incredible putty began to rapidly change its properties. It began to melt and spread in transparent drops, separating the lid from the base of the coffin. The miners, smeared with soot and dirt, leaned with their whole bodies onto the cold marble. A dull pop sounded, and the multi-ton slab slowly slid to the side, revealing what had been hidden in the darkness for millions of years. What opened up to the gazes of the harsh workers made them drop their crowbars and recoil in terror. Inside the snow-white sarcophagus, there were no decayed bones or frightening artifacts of the past. Looking over the edge, the miners faced a picture that forever deprived them of peace and faith in the familiar world. The enigma that had been slumbering under the thickness of the coal finally saw the light of the sun, and this moment became a point of no return for all participants in those events. What appeared before the stunned eyes of the miners forever crossed out all the known laws of biology and the ossified dogmas of official science. Inside the marble sarcophagus, filled to the brim with a crystal-clear pinkish-blue liquid, rested the body of a woman of breathtaking, truly unearthly beauty. No signs of decay, no destruction by time, no dried-up mummies that museum curators love to feed us. Before the speechless workers lay a young, sleeping beauty of about 30 years old, whose perfect preservation threw an audacious challenge to the very concept of physical passing to the other world. How could human tissues survive hundreds of millions of years in an aggressive underground environment. Her thick, dark blonde hair, with a slight reddish tint, flowed softly over her shoulders, astonishing with its incredible, frightening vitality. Wide-open, enormous blue eyes looked directly into the souls of the paralyzed miners, creating a creepy, paralyzing illusion that the woman was about to take a deep breath. Delicately white, almost porcelain skin without the slightest flaw, neat facial features, shortly trimmed nails with a perfect manicure. All this looked as if she had visited an elite beauty salon literally an hour before her century-long immersion into this stone sarcophagus. Could primitive human ancestors, waving clubs, possess such genetics and an appearance indistinguishable from modern residents of European metropolises? This relates to those very glaring facts that make academicians hysterically tear their hair out and hide archives under 7 seals. The clothes of the mysterious captive raised no fewer shocking questions than her astounding physiological preservation. The woman was wearing a translucent, snow-white dress of the finest workmanship, just below the knees, with elegant short sleeves decorated with exquisite floral embroidery. No buttons, no rough seams, no fasteners or zippers. The fabric seemed to be woven from a monolithic material unknown to science, surpassing modern synthetic polymers in strength and lightness. Who and on what super-technological machines could have created this masterpiece of the textile industry at a time when even dinosaurs did not roam the earth? The very substance in which this guest from the abyss of time was submerged represents the greatest chemical riddle over which secret laboratories are still scratching their heads. The thick, viscous, pinkish liquid did not freeze at sub-zero temperatures and did not evaporate in the sun, while possessing fantastic preserving properties. According to the testimony of terrified eyewitnesses, as soon as the substance began to evaporate slightly in the open air, the woman's snow-white skin instantly began to darken before their eyes, as if time suddenly remembered its rights. But it was enough to add literally a drop of this mysterious liquid to the coffin, and the frightening blackness instantly disappeared, and the stranger's face regained a frightening blush. What is this? An alien balm of immortality, or the pinnacle of nanotechnology from a forgotten earthly super-civilization? This relates to the evidence of a colossal technological gap between us and those who rest in the bowels of the Siberian earth. Right at the head of the Sleeping Beauty lay an object that finally destroyed all historical stereotypes. A small black box of rectangular shape, gleaming with a matte finish in the sun's rays. No carvings, no magical symbols, only a strict, functional design, painfully reminiscent of modern smartphones or remote control devices for cryogenic chambers. A quote from one of the workers present, passed in a whisper from mouth to mouth, reads, "She is not from our time. She was waiting for a signal, and we broke her capsule." Could this black box be the key to solving the greatest paradox in the history of mankind? Astoundingly, there were no amulets, bracelets, or necklaces on the woman's arms and neck, which completely shatters the theory of the ritual burial of an ancient priestess. No gifts for the afterlife, no golden idols, only cold pragmatism and the sterile purity of a technological capsule. Every detail of this picture screams that this is not a grave, but a real stasis capsule, whose timer was mercilessly knocked down by the bucket of an ordinary Soviet excavator. Will we ever be able to comprehend the scale of that technological abyss that simple Kuzbass miners peered into on that fateful autumn day? Rumors in tiny workers' settlements spread faster than a forest fire, and Razavchik was no exception. Not even a couple of hours had passed since the opening of the stone monolith when the news of the Sleeping Beauty from the Paleozoic era flew around every barrack and every miner's trailer. Already by noon of that very September day, at the bottom of the quarry, there was no room to swing a cat because of the onlookers eager to see the greatest anomaly in the history of the planet with their own eyes. People abandoned their work, went down into the mine, violating every conceivable safety instruction, just to touch the incredible. How could the local leadership allow such a glaring leak of information in the very heart of a restricted industrial region? The regional authorities arrived at the scene in a state close to absolute panic. Pale, sweat-covered officials grabbed the handsets of their radios with trembling hands, desperately demanding instructions from the regional center. According to eyewitnesses, the party bosses literally lost their speech when their eyes fell upon the crystal-clear liquid and the unearthly face of the stranger. They understood perfectly well. This discovery was a one-way ticket. It would either elevate them to the top of the career ladder or forever grind them into camp dust. Why, instead of delight at a great scientific discovery, could only an animal, primordial fear, be read in the eyes of the nomenclature? This relates to those very classic scenarios when the state machine activates the mode of total suppression of any inconvenient truth. Around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the idyll ended. The sky over Kuzbass was torn by the deafening roar of the rotors of heavy military helicopters. Black government cars drove into the village in a column, pouring out people in strict civilian suits who did not present any identification. The quarry was instantly cordoned off by a triple ring of armed guards with dogs, and all onlookers began to be harshly, with the use of force, pushed outside the perimeter. Was the government really ready to use weapons against its own citizens just to hide the secret of the Siberian sarcophagus from them? The men in grey acted with terrifying, mechanical efficiency, as if they had rehearsed the operation for the seizure of alien artifacts in advance. Everyone who had seen the marble box, even out of the corner of their eye, was immediately taken under tight escort and led to hastily organized headquarters tents for hours of interrogations. The workers were directly threatened with accusations of an anti-Soviet conspiracy, demanding that they sign documents on the non-disclosure of state secrets. One of the officers, as witnesses claim, stated in an icy tone to the foreman, "You will forget what you saw, or your family will forever lose its breadwinner." Can such unprecedented cruelty really be called an ordinary precautionary measure during an archaeological find? This relates to those dark pages of history where facts are ruthlessly destroyed to maintain control over the minds of the masses. The entire territory of the coal mine was declared a quarantine zone under the trumped-up, absolutely ridiculous pretext of a sudden outbreak of an infectious disease. Local residents were strictly forbidden to leave their homes, and military trucks covered with tarpaulins without license plates began to flock to the quarry. The state machine started working at full capacity, grinding the fates of simple Kuzbass men who dared to look behind the scenes of the universe. Why is the system so panickingly afraid of artifacts from the past that it is ready to resort to large-scale terror against its own population? The secret services did not just isolate the area. They began to methodically clean up any material traces of the mysterious capsule's presence on the surface. All clothes, tools, and even personal belongings that could have come into contact with the pink liquid or marble dust were confiscated from the workers. The earth around the discovery site was literally dug up and taken away in an unknown direction, as if trying to erase the very memory of this event. The totalitarian apparatus demonstrated its true ruthless essence. No single person has the right to know more than is permitted by the general line. How long will we continue to tolerate this blatant lie and believe in a fabricated history dictated by men in grey suits? Where does the inconvenient truth disappear when it threatens the fundamental foundations of our worldview? The theft of the millennium unfolded right before the eyes of the stunned residents of Kuzbass. On that fateful day, the heavens above the village shuddered from the deafening roar of the engines of a colossal, unmarked cargo helicopter. The military acted with incredible, frightening efficiency, as if they were practicing the capture of an alien ship. The heavy marble sarcophagus, hiding the greatest mystery of civilization, was ruthlessly shoved into the iron belly of the rotary wing machine. Where were these men in grey taking our rightful heritage? This relates to those very unprecedented acts of state cover-up that make your blood run cold. The helicopter with the priceless cargo took a sharp course towards Novosibirsk, and the choice of this route was by no means accidental. It was there, far from the prying eyes of the international community, that the most closed, top-secret laboratory complexes were located. Insiders of those years whisper with a tremor in their voices about the underground bunkers of the Siberian branch of the Academy of Sciences, where entry was denied even to the highest party officials. The sarcophagus was delivered directly to sterile boxes, forever cutting off access to the find for any honest researcher. The iron doors of the special depository slammed shut, and a curtain of absolute total silence fell upon history. Just think about this glaring absurdity. Not a single official press release, not a single tiny scientific publication, an absolute informational vacuum. Is it conceivable to hide a multi-ton stone monolith and erase any mention of it from all state registers? We continue to be fed dusty fables from school textbooks, while the genuine evidence of human origins cynically decays in lead safes. How can one so brazenly and with impunity steal its own past from humanity? This relates to large-scale operations to clean up the information field, where bulldozers, blackmail, and harsh pressure are put into action. To finally cover their tracks, the state machine went to unprecedented lengths. The coal mine near Rozavchik was rapidly declared unprofitable, although colossal solid fuel deposits remained there. The territory of the quarry was covered with thousands of cubic meters of earth, compacted by heavy machinery, and a dense forest was planted in the shortest possible time. A brilliant, diabolically cunning plan to destroy evidence worked flawlessly. Today, only pines and birches grow at the site of the historical find. What were the academicians in epaulets doing behind the closed doors of the Novosibirsk laboratories? Were they trying to dismantle the mysterious black device lying at the head of the Sleeping Beauty? Or perhaps they were desperately trying to synthesize that very pink liquid, hoping to get an elixir of eternal youth for the aging elite? None of these questions have ever been answered, leaving us with only pitiful crumbs from leaked rumors. Official departments keep a dead silence, but this silence is more eloquent than any frank confessions. Do those in power genuinely believe that the people are too foolish to perceive such shocking information? We are treated like an unreasoning crowd that must be shielded from the realization that our civilization is hundreds of millions of years old. The Tisul guest dissolved into the bottomless black hole of secret archives, becoming the most guarded mystery of the last century. How long will we put up with this grandiose falsification and believe in fabricated chronicles? We demand the opening of the archives, but in response, we hear only the contemptuous, cold silence of stone walls. Who really inhabited the endless expanses of our planet hundreds of millions of years before the appearance of the first primate? Official academic science is throwing a hysterical fit, flatly refusing to recognize obvious facts that leave no stone unturned from the much-touted Darwinian theory of evolution. The Tisul discovery is not just an inexplicable anomaly or a random dating error, but ironclad proof of the existence of a mighty super-civilization on the territory of modern Siberia. The remains of a woman, preserved in an ideal, frighteningly pristine condition throughout entire geological epochs, completely shatter the ridiculous fairy tales about wild ancestors with stone axes. We are dealing with a global society whose level of technological development makes modern achievements look like pathetic children's toys. This relates to those very forbidden layers of the planet's true chronicle that armchair professors are panickingly afraid to drag out into the light. Imagine a highly developed state that flourished in the Paleozoic era, when, according to lying textbooks, primitive amphibians had barely originated on Earth. Anatomical analysis of the Siberian beauty's perfect proportions points to the purest line of development, which proceeded in a completely different way, inaccessible to our understanding. These ancient masters of the planet did not build smoking factories and did not pollute the atmosphere. They knew how to control the very structure of matter at the subatomic level. That is precisely why their amazing artifacts do not succumb to the destructive influence of time at all, remaining imperishable in the most aggressive conditions of the underground depths. The embalming liquid in which this messenger from the distant past was carefully immersed represents a true chemical triumph of a lost race. Leading independent researchers unanimously declare the mysterious pink solution is a highly complex nanotechnological cocktail that completely blocks the processes of cellular decay and stops the biological fading of tissues. Modern pharmaceutical corporations spend billions of dollars searching for the elixir of youth, while ancient Siberian chemists had already perfectly mastered the recipe for absolute cryogenic stasis back then. They learned to freeze the biological clock, plunging physical shells into an artificial eternal sleep, absolutely immune to the corrosion of centuries. What other known culture could boast of such total control over the nature of matter? This relates to the irrefutable evidence that it is Siberia that is the true ancestral home of highly developed humanity, and not just a cold, lifeless appendage of civilization. Mystical legends about the enigmatic Hyperborea, a northern land of powerful beings, suddenly acquire frighteningly real, tangible outlines. The marble sarcophagus of flawless geometric shape was carved by tools using high-frequency, ultrasonic technologies, the working principles of which our engineers are only beginning to guess. Clothing made from an unknown polymer fiber that does not lose its strength for hundreds of millions of years only confirms the colossal gap between this primeval civilization and our current pitiful level. Does it turn out that we are merely the degraded descendants of great titans, having forever lost the keys to genuine power? Why does the scientific elite continue to deny the existence of this prehistoric Siberian state with such fanatical stubbornness? The answer lies right on the surface. Recognizing the Tisul artifact as genuine will require an immediate and complete rewriting of the entire chronology of Earth's development, the cancellation of hundreds of fake doctoral dissertations, and the collapse of established schools. It is much more profitable for them to cynically hide inconvenient finds in the lead safes of special depositories than to openly admit their total incompetence in the face of true history. The ancient super-civilization did not disappear without a trace. It left us these priceless time capsules, messages to eternity, which we, in our wild ignorance, tear open with excavator buckets. This relates to the category of global scientific falsifications, the real scale of which simply does not fit into the head of an ordinary law-abiding citizen. If such a phenomenal chemical industry was working on the territory of modern Kuzbass 800 million years ago, then where are the remains of their sparkling metropolises and the skeletons of incredible machines? Honest, independent geologists have long given the answer. Over the past epochs, monstrous tectonic shifts and global cataclysms wiped all monumental buildings off the face of the Earth, processing them into that very coal rock. Armored sarcophagi, specially placed deep underground in stable layers, remained the only surviving witnesses of this colossal empire. And now, when the Earth itself begins to return its great secrets, the system is doing absolutely everything so that we never in our lives learn the truth about our true, godlike ancestors. What if the moss-covered academicians are stubbornly looking in completely the wrong direction, trying to squeeze the Tisul discovery into the Procrustean bed of ancient history? Discard the dusty theories about proto-civilizations because we are facing a classic, documented case of a chronoclasm. The marble box is by no means a tomb, but a very real emergency capsule of a time machine that suffered a crushing crash hundreds of millions of years ago. A navigation system failure threw the beautiful traveler into the Paleozoic era, forever cutting off her way home. How can anyone in their right mind deny that we are dealing with a guest from an incredibly distant, highly technological future. Look closely at the anthropological characteristics of this mysterious prisoner of the stone sack. A perfectly regular, pure European phenotype is absolutely unthinkable for that wild prehistoric era. No signs of hard physical labor, no rough facial features characteristic of primitive humanoids or ancient nomads. This woman with delicate, noble features looks like a typical resident of a metropolis of the 22nd or even 30th century. How could genetics produce such a perfect, flawless result long before the official origin of the human race? This relates to those very ironclad, irrefutable pieces of evidence that completely break the pitiful excuses of official science. The main proof of arrival from the future lies in the unique details of the Sleeping Beauty's wardrobe. The snow-white dress has not a single seam, not a single pitiful button, metal fastener, or lacing. The fabric is a continuous, monolithic material of unknown nature, which modern secret laboratories are only timidly trying to synthesize. This is a high-tech, smart polymer capable of instantly adapting to body temperature and protecting against background radiation during dangerous temporal jumps. And now pay close attention to the complete, absolute absence of any jewelry on the body and in the sarcophagus itself. Historians love to find golden rings, bone amulets, and ritual necklaces in ancient burials, determining the social status of the departed by them. But here we see a sterile, harsh functionality where there is absolutely no place for primitive, barbaric trinkets. The highest civilizations of the coming centuries have long outgrown the stupid stage of demonstrating power through pieces of yellow metal. Their main wealth is a colossal intellect, and they simply do not need jewelry on dangerous expeditions through the tangled fabric of time. This relates to the striking facts that the secret services are trying to erase forever from the collective memory of humanity. The mysterious black box at the woman's head is not an occult object for communicating with spirits, but a temporal beacon that went out of order. It was this device that was supposed to send a signal to the rescue team from the future, but its quiet operation was interrupted by the rough bucket of a clumsy Soviet excavator. And the pink liquid is not an ancient balm at all, but an innovative biogel for deep cryostasis, saving the body from physical decay during the transition through the centuries. The woman did not leave this world forever. She was simply submissively waiting for awakening in her autonomous rescue capsule. However, there is another, much more grandiose and frightening version of the origin of the Tisul captive. Before us is an elite representative of a supreme extraterrestrial race whose reconnaissance cruiser suffered a catastrophe in the orbit of prehistoric Earth. The marble box is an ejected rescue shuttle, a perfect disguise as a natural stone for survival in the aggressive environment of an alien wild planet. They flew here millions of years before us to sow the seeds of life, and we broke open their capsule like insane barbarians. The hidden underground archives are surely bursting with blueprints and diagrams secretly copied from this alien or temporal equipment. While naive citizens firmly believe the television news, the shadow government is actively mastering the technologies of chronoportation and interstellar flights. They cynically usurped the right to this incredible discovery in order to gain absolute, boundless power over time and space. The Tisul discovery is our only ticket to a stellar future, which was brazenly stolen right from under our noses. We are obliged to tear the dense cover of secrecy off this greatest fantastic reality that has long become an undeniable historical fact. Stop feeding the public sweet fairy tales about guests from the future and ancient civilizations. It's time to cast off the veil of mysticism and look into the icy eyes of harsh reality. In 2007, when the myth of the Tisul Princess reached its hysterical climax, a journalist from the Kuzbass publication Siberia, Roman Yanchenko, decided to conduct a real fact-checking. He took his voice recorder, a notepad, and went straight to the epicenter of the conspiratorial explosion, to that very village of Rjavchik. No speculations, only hard-hitting documentary journalism. What appeared before the eyes of the meticulous reporter at the site of the greatest mystery of the century. Imagination paints secret military bases, barbed wire, and grim Secret Service agents. But reality struck back with its cynical pragmatism. That very legendary coal mine, where the marble sarcophagus was supposedly unearthed, had ceased its operations way back in 1973. By the time Yanchenko arrived, a dense, impenetrable forest was already rustling at the site of the historical anomaly. Nature ruthlessly erased any traces of human presence. This relates to those very cold showers that sober up lovers of cheap tabloid hoaxes. The journalist did not wander among the birch trees looking for alien artifacts, but turned to ironclad, irrefutable documents. He began digging through archives, studying the personnel rosters of the work brigades, and searching for real, living people. The task was extremely concrete: to drag out into the daylight those who had picked at this earth with their own hands in September '69. Real journalism is not about inventing beautiful metaphors, but an exhausting search for a needle in a haystack. Yanchenko methodically went from yard to yard, knocking on crooked gates and questioning local old-timers. The village had emptied significantly. Many eyewitnesses of those years had long since departed to another world, taking their memories with them. It seemed that the investigation had hit a dead, hopeless end. Is the truth forever buried under tombstones? But persistence always bears fruit, even when hope has almost faded. The Sib Depot journalist managed to accomplish the absolutely impossible. He tracked down Nikolai Mikhailovich Garmanov. Just think about the scale of this luck. This was the very excavator operator who, according to Gonchar's legend, was the first to stumble upon the stone monolith. The key witness, the main figure of this whole incredible story, turned out to be alive and was right in front of the reporter. This relates to the moments of truth when grandiose houses of cards of lies are ready to collapse from a single breath of facts. Imagine the colossal tension of this interview. A stern labor veteran, who gave the best years of his life to the mines, sits opposite the journalist. Now he will open his mouth and either confirm the global conspiracy of the secret services or forever destroy a beautiful myth. What did the old excavator operator say on the record? Yanchenko did not beat around the bush, but asked point-blank about the marble sarcophagus, the pink liquid, and the men in civilian clothes. He began checking the surnames mentioned in the sensational article against Garmanov's real memories. Yes, such people were indeed on the payroll. Alexander Karnaukov and Vladimir Masaligin were not the figment of a hack's sick imagination, but real Kuzbass men. Could the article of 2002 be the pure truth? The facts began to intertwine into a tight, contradictory knot. The journalist received confirmation of even the darkest details of the original publication. The tragic end of Karnaukov's life, who fell under the wheels of a heavy Kraz truck, turned out to be a cruel reality, not an invention to escalate the drama. An astounding coincidence, or the methodical elimination of witnesses. The documentary investigation suddenly took an extremely dangerous, criminal turn. But the devil, as always, is in the details that the creators of sensations so dislike noticing. Yanchenko began painstakingly comparing the positions of these real people with the roles assigned to them by the tabloid press. And this is exactly where the flawless construction of the myth cracked for the first but fatal time. The positions did not match, the chronology fell apart, and the picture of events began to change radically under the weight of ironclad evidence. The myth has collapsed, shattering into tiny fragments under the weight of irrefutable evidence. Excavator operator Nikolai Garmanov, the very man whose hand supposedly uncovered the greatest mystery of the millennium, delivered a crushing blow to the fantasies of conspiracy theorists. Looking straight into the journalist's eyes, the Labour veteran with 33 years of experience at the mine hammered out the harsh truth. In all those long decades, not a single sarcophagus, not a single capsule, and not a single alien artifact was ever pulled from the bowels of the Earth. There were no marble coffins in September 1969, and there could not have been. This entire grandiose story about a sleeping beauty is an absolutely brazen, unprincipled lie, from the first to the last word, invented for the sake of a cheap sensation. This relates to those cynical manipulations where real human fates are ruthlessly woven into dirty tabloid fiction. Garmanov confirmed that Alexander Karnaukov and Vladimir Masaligin indeed worked shoulder to shoulder with him in the harsh conditions of Kuzbass. However, their positions were completely different, and the roles assigned to them in the scandalous publication are nothing more than the author's sick imagination. None of these stern Kuzbass men ever stood in a cordon, communicated with plainclothes agents, or signed state secrecy non-disclosure agreements. The ordinary hard workers did not even suspect that decades later their names would be used to create the loudest pseudoscientific hoax of the century. As for the tragic passing of Alexander Karnaukov, which conspiracy theorists presented as a brutal elimination of witnesses, the reality turned out to be much more prosaic and bitter. The man indeed fell under the wheels of a heavy Kraz truck, but it was not a planned act of removal, rather a monstrous industrial accident typical for dangerous industrial sites. No mystical curse of an ancient tomb, no treacherous Secret Service agents cutting short the lives of unwanted eyewitnesses. The yellow press simply took a real human tragedy and cynically used it as fuel to inflate paranoid hysteria around a fictional marble monolith. This relates to blatant speculations that crumble to dust at the very first encounter with the testimonies of first circle witnesses. The Sibdepo journalist did not stop at Garmanov's testimony and found Karnaukov's widow, Tatyana. The woman, who lived side by side with Alexander during those very years, was genuinely dumbfounded by questions about secret finds and pink liquid. She categorically stated that her husband labored at the quarry, but never in his life mentioned any underground sarcophagi, helicopters, or people from the agencies. Could a simple miner hide an event of such colossal, planetary scale from his own wife if it had actually happened? The final nail in the coffin of this fake legend was driven by the director of the local village school, Galina Rebrikova, a person with an impeccable reputation and immense authority. When Oleg Kulishkin's article blew up the information space in 2002, it was she who organized her own investigation right on the ground. Teachers and local historians visited all the surviving old-timers of Rozhavchik, trying to find at least the slightest clue, at least a grain of truth in a sea of newspaper lies. The verdict was absolutely unequivocal and categorical. Not a single old-timer remembered anything of the sort. No one saw cordons, no one heard of a mysterious discovery. The harsh facts have ruthlessly destroyed the beautiful illusion, leaving sensation seekers with nothing. There is no Tisul Princess, there are no lost embalming technologies, there is, and never was, a secret conspiracy of the special services in the Kuzbass wilderness. The legend turned out to be a dummy, masterfully tailored from real names, industrial accidents, and the wild imagination of a newspaper hack. It is time to admit the bitter truth and stop looking for a black cat in a dark room, especially when that cat was never there in the first place. So, is the grandiose myth finally crushed? The heavy steel gates of logic slammed shut, ruthlessly burying the beautiful Siberian captive under a multi-ton layer of dry, boring documents. The documentary truth turned out to be incredibly harsh. No marble monoliths, no classified agents with dogs, no time machines at the bottom of a dirty Kuzbass quarry. We are obliged to look the facts straight in the eye. Before us is a brilliant, diabolically clever newspaper hoax that masterfully took millions of minds hostage around the world. But why did this particular fictional plot explode the information space with the destructive force of a nuclear bomb? Why did we, pragmatic and cynical residents of high technologies, so desperately cling to the illusion of a sleeping beauty from the Paleozoic era? This relates to that very ineradicable thirst for a miracle that has been pulsating in the human subconscious for centuries, demanding a release. Our modern world has become too bland, too sterile, and frighteningly predictable. Official academic science has hung labels on absolutely everything, from the movement of tectonic plates to the structure of the DNA molecule. The grey, everyday reality literally suffocates us with its reinforced concrete routine, leaving not a single chance for the great, mind-blowing unknown. The legend of the Tisul artifact is a collective, deafening cry of desperation from all of humanity, which categorically refuses to believe in its primitive, simian origin. We fiercely desire to be direct heirs of great cosmic titans, not just a random result of blind biological mutation. Just think about the colossal, penetrating power of this astounding legend. It continues to live, evolve, and excite the minds of the masses, absolutely ignoring any ironclad arguments from dull skeptics. Perhaps the true magic lies not at all in the physical existence of the pink liquid or the stone coffin, but in the fact that humanity still looks at the night sky with a sinking heart. We feverishly search the impenetrable bowels of the earth for proof that we are not alone, that there is some higher design, a great purpose skillfully hidden from the cynical eyes of the state system. Can millions of thinking people be condemned for simply wanting to touch eternity and throw off the shackles of official lies? This relates to the greatest philosophical paradoxes of our civilization. The more dry facts are presented to us, the stronger and fiercer our belief in a saving myth becomes. And what if this debunking itself is just another incredibly complex level of a global cover-up operation? The shadow elites have perfectly mastered the art of mass manipulation. They throw fake investigators at us, provide planted witnesses, and make us believe that the great mystery never existed. Our planet is literally overflowing with classified artifacts, closed anomalous zones, and strictly guarded riddles. Who can give a 100% guarantee that right now, in a lead underground bunker, a real guest from the future is not waiting for her moment? Official authorities cowardly put an end to it, but in the world of hidden history, there is always a meaningful, intriguing ellipsis. The real, uncompromising truth is born only in fierce disputes, in bold doubts, and in the harsh denial of imposed dogmas. Now the floor is yours, the most critical, thinking, and independent audience. What exactly is the Tisul Princess to you? A brilliant fiction of the tabloid press, a masterfully hidden artifact of an earthly super-civilization, or a real echo of time travel? Go down into the comments right now and deliver your honest, harsh verdict. Share this investigation with those who are not afraid to look beyond the edge of the permitted. And remember, the most grandiose secrets of the system are always hidden in plain sight. Right now, at this very second, the soulless algorithms of search engines and video hostings are doing absolutely everything possible to make you forget this episode forever. The system is configured to hide the inconvenient, prickly truth deep in digital basements, slipping you instead a grey, primitive chewing gum of entertainment shows and empty news. If you have watched this large-scale investigation to the end, it means your mind categorically refuses to blindly submit to the dictatorship of official science. You are an integral part of that very thinking, critical minority that cannot be bought with cheap fairy tales. Prove it right now, without delaying for a second. Hit the like button with such force that this powerful signal breaks through the reinforced concrete walls of digital censorship. Remember, every thumbs up you give is a crushing breach in their calibrated system of global lies. It is your personal protest against the concealment of the true history of mankind. Subscribe to our channel immediately to stand in the same ranks with those who seek the hidden facts of large-scale conflicts, the secrets of vanished empires, and the conspiracies of cruel kings. We have only just begun to dig this bottomless well of mysteries, and those sensational materials that we are extracting right now from dust-covered special depositories will make even the most cynical, hardened skeptics shudder with horror. Ahead of us lie such grandiose exposures of the world backstage that armchair professors and cowardly bureaucrats will literally have their hair stand on end. Be sure, do you hear me? Be sure to hit the bell icon and activate absolutely all notifications without exception. If you ignore this simple step, cunning filters will simply ruthlessly hide our next breakthrough episode from you, and you will once again find yourself in a deaf informational vacuum, face to face with official propaganda. This relates to that very ruthless, invisible informational battle for minds that is unfolding right now on the screens of your monitors and smartphones. Do not let people in strict suits decide for you what you are allowed to know and what must remain classified. Go down into the comments and leave your harsh, weighty, uncompromising opinion. Write what you really think about this cynical falsification of our past. Your free word is our main, most destructive weapon against their total, arrogant silence. Spread this recording among your loyal comrades. Send the link to those who are still capable of analyzing facts and drawing independent conclusions. We are building here a territory of absolute freedom, the only resource where historical events are not polished to please cowardly censors. Your like, your subscription, your bell icon. This is your personal contribution to global awakening. Stay in touch with us. Keep your mind cold, because the genuine truth is already ready to break free.